Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Hendrick, way down yonder at New Orleans here on Lake Pontchartrain, and the weather, less than perfect. We've had rain throughout the morning and sometimes very hard. And now to add to the problems, for the season opener for offshore powerboats, the wind is kicked up, and that's going to make the waves anywhere from 4 to 6 feet on this lake. Now, to find out how rough it's going to be and what can we expect, let's call in an expert. Former driver in the offshore division in the modifieds is Paula Aiken from Southern California. Paula, as a driver, how would you prepare for the conditions that exist right now, wind, rain, etc.?
Jim, I tell you, it's going to be very rough out there. This lake is only 25 miles wide, and we've got 15 feet in the deepest areas around the lake. So I think these drivers are going to find out it's going to be a physical race today.
Actually, a lake like this can kick up just as rough as an ocean.
A lot of the drivers don't like racing in lakes because they say they're offshore powerboat drivers, but I think they're going to be surprised out there today.
What about the visibility? I understand in some parts of this course it could drop as, well, less than a half a mile.
I think they fixed that for this year because they have strobe lights. They have 330,000 candlelight powers on board these boats. Should be able to see the check boats for about a mile.
Well, for a season kickoff, we do have our problems, and we will not have to solve them. It'll be the drivers and crews. We'll see how they do that at the start of the race in just a moment.
A come-from-behind win in the Long Beach Grand Prix. The sun finally shines on Grand National Stock Car Racing. And the offshore powerboat season opens in New Orleans. All this and more today on television's fastest half hour. The idea of a boat race getting rained out may seem ironic, but it happened last weekend in New Orleans. A Saturday storm delayed the American Powerboat Association offshore opener until Sunday, when the competitors were greeted by blue skies and 2 to 4 foot seas. Jim Roller has the story.
38 boats took to the New Orleans Lake Pontchartrain, and it didn't take long for veterans Al Copeland in the yellow number 19 and Tony Garcia in the red and white number 6 to establish themselves as the ones to beat. Those two set a blistering pace as they moved away from the field, battling side by side for the first 100 miles of the event. They swapped the lead back and forth until Copeland suffered transmission problems, dropping him out of the race. That left Garcia, the defending world champion, alone out front, but the win still didn't come easily. Watch as he closes in on the checkered flag, near disaster. Another look shows just how high that 38-foot catamaran came out of the water. It then nosedives, and the impact tears a gaping hole in the center of the boat, almost splitting it in half. After that near disaster, Garcia limped across the finish line, then straight to the dock before his boat would sink from underneath him. In sport class, defending national champion Dan Weinstein had his hands full with Butch Ryan's Express and the Seahawk of Willie Falcon. Those two tailed Weinstein closely until the final stages of the race, when Weinstein was able to pull out a 1-minute margin and take the victory. In the modified class, defending New Orleans modified winner Bobby Shear had it all his way. After defending national champion Sal Magluta dropped out with mechanical problems early, veteran Shear was left all alone to take his second straight New Orleans modified title. Pro stock action was tight as usual. Defending national champion Pete Aiken in Black Duck had his hands full with newcomer John D'Elia. D'Elia in Special Edition stayed glued to Aiken all the way. Then in the last laps, the veteran Aiken was able to push his 30-foot Shadow Cat to a 30-second margin. He held on to that for the win. Here's a look at all the class winners. The offshore stars will now get a month off before moving to Cape Coral, Florida in mid-May. For Motor Week Illustrated, this is Jim Roller reporting.
Motor Week Illustrated was brought to you by Firestone Tire, where we're building radial tires street legal, competition tough, and proving it every week in the nation's toughest motorsports action. Firestone, the word's getting around. And by Honda Motorcycles. Honda, follow the leader. Some transportation and promotional consideration have been furnished by Eastern, the first airline to fly the new Boeing 757. Whether you're traveling to Florida for spring training or spring vacation, chances are Eastern's going your way. Come fly with Eastern. And Honda, the builders of the ultimate superbike of the street, the incredible V45 Interceptor.
Al, you're the sponsor of this race, Popeyes Famous Fried Chicken and Pepsi Challenger. How did you get the dubious honor of sponsoring a race?
Well, it was really kind of a last-minute thing, you know. Mike Drury had been talking closely with me for the last 3 or 4 months. We were trying to raise a sponsor, and couldn't raise a sponsor for the race. And at the last minute, we just decided to put it together for Popeyes. And so the last 3 weeks, they've really been hustling, trying to do everything they needed to do to organize it, you know.
You're going to be racing out there on Saturday, and I know that you happen to have around 5 holes. How did you choose this particular hole that you're going to be racing, and which one is it?
Well, APBA has instituted a single boat ruling for this year, and we just felt that a cat boat would be the proper boat to use, and we are building a 50-foot cat now. It's one of the 5 hulls you're talking about. And, you know, the reason I had so many hulls is because it's a really competitive game. It's kind of hard to keep up with this competition, you know?
That it is.
So we got to try to stay a jump ahead of them. But this particular hull is a 41-foot Cougar cat, and it's a good boat. And
what type of engines have you got in?
Mercury engines, Mercury race engines.
Tell me, Al, how does it feel to go over 100 miles an hour in open ocean?
It feels good. It feels even better when you're in front of the rest of them.
Al, how did you get involved as a businessman and owning a chicken house? How did you get involved in offshore racing?
Well, it's really kind of funny. I guess I started several years ago. I bought a weekend racer, I guess. It was a jet boat, and it was the fastest jet boat in Lake Pontchartrain. And it was fun. I'd come out every Sunday and race everybody, and I beat them all, and I enjoyed it. And then one day a guy with a V-bottom beat me, so I went and got a faster boat. And I beat him, and then I beat everybody else on the lake, and that held for a couple of years. And then finally some guy came along and beat me, and the next step was offshore racing, so nobody could beat me on the lake, you know.
Al, your position on that boat is driving. Who's your throttleman?
Bill Sarai is my throttle man and engineer. And to me, he's the best in the business. He's the man responsible for keeping the boat running. He's the man responsible for running the shop and getting the speeds that we're getting and keeping us winning. To me, he's great.
Bill, you are the throttleman for Al Copeland's Popeyes Fried Chicken Pepsi Challenger. Can you tell me what your position really entails?
Well, yeah, of course, during the races is to act as a co-driver with Al, to throttle the boat and trim it, and attempt to keep it on a good trim basis while we're racing.
How many people do you have working for you to keep that boat in running order?
Well, not just that particular boat. We have 5 boats, of course, and it takes a little bit of a staff, and we've got 3 people that work full time on the whole project.
I know that you've been in racing for a long time, and you started out with Mercury, and you're still with Mercury. Can you tell us about your racing career?
Yeah, I've been racing about 20 years. I started in 1959 with Mercury, and just as a test driver for Mercury. And one thing led to another, and it ended up that, way back in 1960 and 61, 62, Mercury was racing offshore at that time. And of course, we went on to other types of racing, Grand Prix type racing and circuit racing and so on. And then I went into business for myself. I worked for Mercury for 13 years, and I went on to business for myself. And then a few years later, I got back into offshore again. So I've been back in it now about 3 or 4 years with Al.
Tony, you took the World Championships in 1982. What are your plans for 83?
Doing it again. We were very fortunate. In winning the last 4 races, we did it the hard way. We lost 5 in a row before we could start winning. But somehow we got it all together, Paula, and it's worked like a charm. Winning the 4 national races in a row, garnering the World Championship, setting the new world speed record. What more could you ask for? We've been asked for 1 more. We'd like to win 5 in a row, so let's see what happens.
Okay. What is the difference between your particular hull design and a regular Cougar cat? I know yours is built in the Philippines. What makes it different?
Well, it's basically the same, but it's quite an international hull. It's a Cougar design, and then we had it built in the Philippines using Philippine hardwoods, Pacific Northwest spruce, African bronzeals. It's a heavier cat than the other cats, and probably maybe just a little slightly more rocker in it, but that's about it. Other than that, it's straightforward. We sit in our boat to get a lower profile. That's a little bit different. And we operate with only two, as you know. We feel comfortable both taking the navigational roles on. So we feel very comfortable that way, and it seems to look aesthetically nicer as well.
Your job in the boat is driving, and you both share then the navigational. Could you tell us a little bit what Sammy does?
Sammy is an expert throttleman of the best kind. He's done an excellent job in keeping that boat properly trimmed. He watches the breathing of that motor. Sammy is crew chief the boat, and has done a phenomenal job in re-rigging it to the basis that it's working on now. You can see the results.
You're using the Arneson Borg-Warner drives, and you've stayed with that boat since its inception. Can you tell us what benefit that will be to the public?
Yes, the one nice thing, of course, for us is that we're going faster. We feel that we've got a good 10 miles an hour over a conventional drive using it. But for the boating public, I think it's going to really come in handy, and not exactly going faster, but going the same speed or same performance with lesser horsepower, using a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder instead of a V8. So that's going to make it interesting.
Tony, you were talking earlier and mentioning something about some new equipment that you'll be using for personal safety. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we all respect safety and are all conscious of it. Anybody that gets in a powerboat, as you know, is putting himself on the line a bit. And we're looking at all the different aspects that make it a safer sport. One of the things we're experimenting with in this race is I'm putting on all motocross gear. I'm using special shin guards, knee guards, special boots with ankle support, and eventually leading to a carbon fiber egg or module that we'll be able to sit into, so that we don't get the effects of what happened to Rocky in St. Augustine last year, where if water gets into the boat, we're at least shielded again by another barrier.
Tony, I've been asking everyone this question, but you're really interesting because we've been watching you race for a long time. How did you get involved in offshore racing?
Well, you got to be a little nutty anyway, I think, to get involved with the sport. But I've always enjoyed mechanical things, and a guy like Howard Arneson comes along with an idea, and you get all excited, and you do some imagineering, and hope to heck you make it work, and it takes a while.
Dan, you're the 1982 national champion for the sport class boats. What does that have to do with your 1983 chance?
Well, I figure I have a pretty good setup. I haven't changed too much since last year. I'm counting on my dependability to keep me up there this year.
Dan, equipment gets really tired after a season. Does that mean you haven't done a lot of work on it for this year?
No, we've done a lot of work on the equipment. It's all basically the same as we run last year, just we've gone through everything.
Dan, watching you race last year, you took the national championship and you've got one of the fastest boats out there. What's it like to go 100 miles an hour on the water in open ocean?
Well, at times it's scary, but it's a rush. I enjoy it. You know, it's a lot different. I don't take my eyes off the waves for a second. A lot of times, you know, my other crew members will say, "Did you see this? Did you see that?" I say, "No, I didn't see anything. I was just watching the waves." So I'm throttling this year. I was driving the year before. I mean, last year for US 1, I throttled, but the year before that, I drove. So throttling, I don't see too much but the waves in front of me.
Since you've done both positions, you're a driver and a throttleman, what's the difference between the two?
Well, the difference between the two is the guy throttling the boat, I feel, has the most control of the boat. The guy steering the boat has almost as much, but throttle, I think, is a little more important.
The navigator, does he play an important part?
Oh, yeah. Navigator, if it wasn't for our navigator, you know, it doesn't matter how fast you get there. If you're not at the right place, you're nowhere.
Tell me, now we know you do 100 miles an hour out in 5 to 6 foot seas, sometimes 10-foot seas. What do you do to stay in shape?
I play a lot of racquetball, do a lot of running. Basically, I lift weights, too. That's about it.
Pete, you're the navigator for Power Play, and you're also the 1982 national champions in the sport class. What's it like to navigate out there? What does it entail?
Well, I think navigation plays a great deal of importance into the racing itself. Let's face it, you can go as fast as you want to, but our course we have to cover certain checkpoints. Without a navigator aboard, you're basically lost out there.
Pete, how much time do you spend on a course for each race?
Generally, the night before the race is when I do all my charts and everything, get all my courses laid, mileage figured, times versus speed, the speed that I anticipate that I'll be running. I would venture to say it takes 2-3 hours just to do the charts. And then, of course, the actual navigation in the boat is a full-time thing once you're out there racing.
Pete, I know it's got to be brutal just to be hanging on as a navigator versus not being in control, not driving or throttling. What do you feel out there knowing someone else has control?
It's not so much the control. I don't mind relinquishing the control to Dan and Dominic, who are both very competent people. The biggest problem I have in a catamaran is I stand right behind the driver, Dominic, and that limits my vision considerably in the forward direction. That's the part that I don't like too much. I really can't see what's coming.
Pete, you happen to drive the rig across country, and then you're also the navigator inside. I know that cross-country driving is brutal on equipment. What do you do to prepare your equipment for that drive?
Well, we have a real good trailer for the Cat. We have a Myco trailer, and for what it's worth, I think it's one of the best trailers made. It handles the road very well and protects the boat from the bumps and bounces of cross-country travel.
How far do you travel a year?
Oh, thousands of miles, thousands of miles. We came just about 900 miles to get to this race. We go up to Michigan, it's 1,500 miles one way. So actually, I like the long trips like that. I drive by myself, and it gives me time to reevaluate mentally how I've prepared the equipment, and I can go through each step of assembly in my mind to make sure that I have done things as best I can.
Well, then having a Myco trailer to you means a lot more
Having a
comfortable.
Myco trailer to me means I don't have to fix the thing in the middle of some rest area out by the side of the highway.
Willie, since November in the World Championships in Florida, and now it's been 4 months, what have you been doing to your boat to improve it or to work on it those 4 months?
Well, we've been trying to do a lot of changes. We started with, we invented a wind in the boat that will make it a lot faster. We'll lift the boat off the water, and we're trying right now to catch the cats. We're doing very well. We gained 5 miles with the wind, and they got to do a lot of other changes with the wind, and I think it will work. Mechanic-wise, we have tried, we did a lot of things, but right now, for this race, we haven't done anything yet.
Willie, how did you get involved in offshore powerboat racing?
Well, a good friend of mine opened a company named Seahawk, and he wanted to race a boat, so people would notice the company. So we started in production 4 years ago. We started with a 28-footer. We did pretty good that year. And from then on, we just kept on.
You know, Willie, at 90 miles an hour in 8 to 10-foot seas, that is some physical beating you're taking out there. What do you do to stay in shape for it?
In the off-season, we play softball. We have a softball team. We finished second in the nation. We're pretty good at it. Semi-fast softball. We practice 3 times a week. Plus, I enjoy it. I like it. And at the same time, I'm in shape for the races, especially for rough water like maybe tomorrow. It will help a lot.
You know, you're one of the few drivers that have moved from the pro stock class to the sport class, and you've gone from inboards to outboards. Can you tell me the difference between outboards and inboards, the throttle response?
The throttle response, what I learned from my brother, that the outboard, of course, they have a little more punch. I think plus you could put 3 engines in one boat, and I don't see any difference right now, because right now we're using fuel injection, and it's almost working the same as we got the punch, the torque, and it's working very well for us, especially in rough water.
The race for offshore powerboat supremacy here in the Popeyes Fried Chicken Grand Prix continues. Meanwhile, there's a battle here on shore, folks. You recognize this guy? Listen, how long have you been how old are you? Well, that's being discreet. You still eat spinach? You enjoy the races? You know who this is on the other side of me? Hold it, hold it. Now listen, you can call him Bluto, you can call him Brutus, depends on what age area you're from, but these guys are ready to fight here. Now I'm gonna tell you something. You've never won against Popeye yet. What makes you think you can do that today?
I haven't any reason to believe that I can't take him today. Today's the day part.
You have your spinach?
All right, he's ready to go.
You're in deep trouble.
Are we in deep trouble?
You're in deep trouble.
Okay. Almost.
Almost. Little spoof Fank. You know who this is? The Vice President of Offshore Commission. And when I saw Popeye, I said, hey, Jay Smith, you look just like, in earlier days they called him Bluto. Now it's Brutus.
That's correct. That's correct. I have been mistaken for him.
Have you?
Certainly. Look at this. Look at that.
You're big enough. Do you think he's big enough? Did he fool you? Listen, the way this guy talks, I'd love to have him on all the time. Vic Gonzalez, you're the producer. Would you hire this guy? Because he doesn't step on my lines. This has been my finest hour as an announcer.
Beautiful.
We've had incredible weather here, and the boats are, of course, showing their breakdowns. And behind me here is M1 Hawk. He's limping in. Also, we've heard from Popeye's Pepsi Challenger that they've had electrical problems and they're out of the race.
Bernie, you have quite a parlay going. You took 4 races in 1982. The last one, of course, was the Michelob Light World Championship. Tell me, what do you contribute your success to?
Well, it's a lot of good people involved with Anheuser-Busch and Michelob Light, Paula. When you have a driver like Sammy or a throttle man like Sammy and a driver like Tony Garcia, that's a hard combination to beat. And then when you put KS&W engines in there, it just can't do anything but go fast, and that's what they've done. And we're just really glad to be affiliated with so many different people here. And the New Orleans race, sponsored by Popeye Chicken, which have really contributed a lot to this sport. And that's one of the reasons that we're glad to be here. And as you know, all the different sponsors of the program, from Myco Trailers to Arneson Drives, ourselves, Michelob Light, we just feel the sport is doing nothing but going straight up.
Michelob Light has been a big support to offshore racing. In addition, how do you feel about the other sponsors in the sport?
Well, we like to see the more sponsors, the better. We feel that that's why we're here, is we want to beat these other sponsors, whether it's another beer company or anyone else. But it's a challenge, and I think that the more people that see offshore racing will get involved immediately.
What do you contribute the success of the Michelob Light boat to?
Well, I think you have to go to Tony Garcia, Sammy James, the throttle man and crew chief that works like the devil all winter long and prepares it properly. And then when you have Arneson Drives and KS&W engines, it's hard to beat them. And I think that we'll be here for a long time.
It's been 4 months since the World Championship. Tell me, what is the Michelob Light team doing to get ready for this year?
Well, they were trying to find out all of Mercury Marine's secrets and everybody else's. But really, you know, they completely rebuild the Michelob Light and get it prepared for this season. And we really think that we will be national champion this year, and we're really looking forward to it. However, there's a lot of tough competition out there in the New Orleans race.
Armin, in the Popeyes Pepsi Challenger boat, they've got the new Mercury outdrives. Is there anything new that they have inside that you're helping them with?
Well, you can't run the outside without something on the inside. And yes, on the Popeye Pepsi Challenger, we've got some new engines, new types of engines in there that Al will be trying for us.
What type of engine are you referring to? Are you referring to the Siamese block?
Yes, yes, we are. We have tested that engine basically about 1.5 years, and this has been really the first year that we really are offering it to the public, so that anybody that wants to run it can. We've developed a confidence in that engine from people seeing it race, and we've done a lot of work on making sure that it does last and do the job that it's intended.
What is the difference between the Siamese block and the old Chevrolet block?
Well, the old Chevrolet block, in the water passages between the cylinders, there was not a lot of bore. There wasn't a lot of thickness in the bore. It caused the blocks to crack and leak, and it's an expensive proposition for some guy that's racing and trying to, you know, pay the bills at the same time. What General Motors did is that they went and added more material to the bore on the inside, which basically eliminated the water passage. Now, with the amount of water that's going through the engine in offshore, where it's mainly cold, cool water and the volume water, it's not necessary to have basically a normal type automotive block with this type of racing in offshore.
Thank you. Butch, the last race of the season was in November of '82. Now, what have you been doing for the past 4 months to get ready for the first race of the season?
We completely rebuilt the boat from front to back. Went through the engines, did a few modifications on them, and changed our propulsion system to the new Arneson surface drive.
I noticed you're one of the few people to use a 454 and sleeve it down. Why did you do that versus going with a small blocks, which is lighter?
We are running turbochargers, and turbochargers inherently are death on lower ends of engines, and a small block crank will not withstand the force that the turbos put out. So we use a 427 crank, sleeve the big block down to get within the cubic inch displacement, and we've had no problems whatsoever with the engines.
It sounds like the name of the game is speed out there. How fast do you really go?
Well, we had the boat out for 10 minutes today, and it was running, cruising at 90. And it's capable of speeds over 100, I'm sure of it.
Tell me, offshore racing is physical endurance. How do you handle it? Do you exercise?
I run. It's hard. Normally it's hard on your legs, because they're withstanding all the shock. I just do a lot of running every day, and it's about all.
You're one of the few catamarans that uses the 3 people versus a lot of them that use the 2. Why do you have 3 people in your boat?
Larry steers the boat, and it's up to Larry and Bruce is our navigator. Between them, they keep it on course, and also being the navigator, Bruce has, we have wastegates and boost controls in his cockpit. He can control the boost on the engines from his cockpit. He has wastegates and boost gauges and everything. And I run the throttles and the tabs and everything that normally a throttle man does.
Why is Y100 sponsoring offshore powerboat racing?
Well, I think it's going to be a good advertising vehicle. We're the #1 radio station in Florida, and I think because of the amount of races that are in the Florida area, we thought statewide it would be good publicity.
David, what is your particular position in the boat, and what kind of demands does that have against you?
I'm the driver, and the demands are obviously to keep the boat on course and try to keep the boat, going in the right direction. But I've got a terrific crew, and I think it's a team effort from what I've seen of the sport.
How did you get involved in offshore powerboat racing?
I lived in Cleveland for many years, and I was involved in offshore up there. And when I moved to Florida, it just gave me the perfect opportunity.
You know, the name of your boat is so interesting, Black Duck. I know that there's a story behind this. What is that?
Well, the Black Duck, it's named after my restaurant in Westport, Connecticut. And we got the name for the restaurant from the days of the rum runners in the Prohibition era. There was a very famous rum runner named Black Duck who had a sister ship named the Cigarette. And I believe Don Aronow's history behind his company has something to do with the Cigarette. And we chose the other boat, the Black Duck, which was a very successful rum runner until got caught one day off the coast of Rhode Island and basically blown out of the water by the Coast Guard. But we hope we don't end up like that. We've had the Coast Guard on our side this time, we hope.
Tom, I notice on your jacket it says co-driver. Is that the same thing as throttleman?
Yeah. Pete kind of put that name on me as a co-driver, and quite a few people had asked me, what is a co-driver? And it was just at the time when he was making the jackets up, that was the name they put on there instead of a throttle man or crew chief.
How did you and Pete get together as a team?
Well, we go back quite a ways. I met Pete back in 1974. I bought a marina back home, and Pete was involved with boats quite a bit. So he came over to the marina one day, and he said, I've got a cigarette. He had a 28 cigarette at the time. I was doing some work for some other fellas, and he said, would you do some work for me? And that's how we got together. And previous to me buying the marina, I was into automobile racing. So I gave that up when I went to the marina, and then we kind of like got into started racing boats around, 18-foot checkmates have started in that situation. And in the last 2-3 years, Pete introduced me to offshore racing in 1976. The first time I'd ever seen an offshore powerboat race was at Benihana. And we went down there one day to watch the race, and I'd never seen anything like it in my life before. And we were roaming around the pits for a day, and then the actual starting of the race, when I saw it, I just couldn't believe it. It was just unbelievable.
Kevin, congratulations on your win in Class 5. What was it like out there?
It was really rough. I was a lot rougher than what I thought. It really was.
You're a local here. Did that help you at all?
I think it did. I've had a lot of experience in the lake. I've been here about 4 months practicing, so I had a lot of time. I really did.
Tell me, you going to race the whole circuit?
I'm going to try to. I think I might try to go to a catboat maybe for next race. We're having one built, so I think we might be able to do that.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Pete, you won last year. You won US or P1, and now you won this race. Tell me, are you on a parlay or something?
Well, this is a great start for us. Last year we had a very slow start. We didn't even make this race because the boat wasn't ready, and the first 2 races we made, we broke, and both of them didn't finish. So we went to our 4th race without any points at all. And we're just thrilled to get a good start this year. And this was not an easy race by any means. We had a little bit of all kinds of water out there. We had some cat water, we had some rough water, and we had a very good duel going with John Carbonell and the big deep V, the galleon, and we were playing cat and mouse, and fortunately we hit some cat water in the last 2 laps, and we put some distance between us, enough distance to hold them off at the end.
Thank you. How about you, Tom? What was it like?
Well, it was quite rough. Like Pete was saying, we had some water we could run in, but 75% of the course we couldn't really run in that well. There was only one part of the course that we could really let it hang out and open up the gap. We run 3 laps just sitting in there with the group, and then at the 4th lap we started to let it hang out a little bit where we could, and then coming back to backstretch we couldn't make any headway at all, so we were just running along, made our move when we felt it was right.
Well, thank you and congratulations to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, Bob, what was it like to cross that finish line and get the checkered flag?
It was really nice after some of the luck that we had last year. We won this race last year and then kind of had problems the rest of the year. Really felt good.
Tell me, towards the end it looked like you were having a little trouble. What happened?
For some reason we lost steering. Either the pump went out on it or we're not sure yet, but we couldn't control the boat too well. We had to really slow down just to get across the line.
Was it sloppy out there?
Yes, very. From 6 to 5, it was really blowing head on. It was really rough for the cats.
Well, listen, congratulations again. We'll see you at the next race.
Thank you.
I'm here with Danny Weinstein from the Power Play, the #1 champion here in Lake Pontchartrain. Danny, what was it like out there?
I tell you, some of the most wicked water I ever seen. Coming back on that far leg into this turn over here, just unbelievable. The attitude, the waves, they weren't that big, but they just were crazy.
Listen, I understand that you throttle now, even though your shirt says driver. You averaged over 86 miles an hour. Were you aware of that?
Well, if we average over 86, that's pretty strange because I was holding them back a lot of the race.
Okay. Dominic, now you drive. How was it out there? Was it sloppy?
Oh, very sloppy. This is the first year I'm starting to drive here. We switched, me and Danny, and it seems to be working out great. He wanted to keep up, stay with the open boats. I'm trying to talk to him and tell him to keep back. It was a rough race out there.
Well, listen, congratulations and good luck for the next race.
Thank you very much.
Tony, you've got quite a parlay going here. 5 in a row.
Can you believe it?
No,
It's
tell
so
me.
exciting, so exciting. The boat ran flawlessly, and thanks to Al Copeland, who ran just one heck of a race. We were dicing it back and forth, and it was quite exciting. It's a shame that he had to fall out because it got boring toward the end there.
Tell me, boring towards the end. I noticed you didn't pick up the checkered flag. How come?
It really did get exciting toward the end. About 300 yards from the finish line, we put the boat up into the air, submarined it literally, and blew I think part of the wing out, started taking on water. We had to go right to the pits and lift the boat out. It was starting to sink, so we couldn't even get the flag.
Well, I notice you're still wet here.
Yeah.
Listen, we've got some tapes over here. I want to bring Al Copeland in. You guys did a fantastic job.
Hey, good race. Very nice race.
I have never seen a cat and dog race like that in my life, and I know the spectators were loving every minute of it. You know,
What was happening a lot of the times, we were kind of dog-legging each other. He'd go on the inside, we'd go on the outside, but he'd go on the outside, we'd go on the inside. And he was thinking the same thing as I was thinking. It's going to boil down to if we can both hold up at the pace that we were going, it would boil down to the last 2-3 turns, and that would have did it.
Well, listen.
What we were trying to figure out was where you were better off, on the outside or the inside when you headed for that finish. And so we were playing with each other to see where we should be, and that made it quite exciting.
Well, listen, congratulations to both of you. I'm sorry, Al, and a 5-time Harley. I tell you, it's terrific for Michelob Light. Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed being here in New Orleans. Al, thank you.
On a
Thank
definite
you.
roll.
Yeah.
I get you that.
when you think it